Based on the title of this video, a decent number of you guys are probably skeptical. This series has always been about War Thunder's largest issues. How could infantry fighting vehicles, which are some of the least common vehicles in War Thunder, cause so much trouble? Most of them don't, but the IFVs that do are really annoying for a lot of people. That's besides the point though, because this video isn't really about how IFVs ruin the game or anything. It's about how messed up the BR system is when it comes to balancing these vehicles. I was spurred to make this video after the release of the M3A3 Bradley, since a lot of people were divided over it. Some people said it was balanced, others didn't. My reaction when playing it was fairly mixed as well. Initially I wasn't doing too great in it, then I started doing really well, probably too well in fact. Though there's a lot of disagreement, the general consensus, and one that I agree with, is that the M3A3's BR is too low. However, I don't think it's the best 8.7 IFV, and I would say that an even better IFV is at a lower battle rating. Simply put, battle ratings for IFVs are incredibly inconsistent, and that leads to a lot of frustration in the player base. You could just boil this all down to BR compression, but I think there's a bit more of this problem than that. For anyone new to War Thunder, BR compression refers to an issue that is a result of there not being enough BR levels. In up tiers, a lot of vehicles have to fight other vehicles that they really have no chance against. Ideally, they would only have to face vehicles that are slightly better than their own. Gaijin says they've been hesitant to decompress battle ratings because that would increase queue times, but I don't think that's the case. In fact, I think the opposite would happen, since more people would be willing to play the game if things were a bit more balanced. Anyway, these massive leaps in vehicle capability are part of the reason why IFVs are a pain to balance, but I think what has a larger effect is the fact that IFVs are so multifaceted. I mean, when you think about it, when compared to IFVs, regular tanks are actually pretty simple to balance. You only really have to worry about the tank's mobility, how much penetration the gun has, how fast it reloads, how much armor it has, and how the gun handles. With IFVs, it's a bit more complicated. You have to worry about stuff like how fast does the ATGM launcher deploy? Can the missiles be fired on the move? How useful is the autocannon? How many ATGMs does it have? Does it have full AP belts or mixed? Does it even have missiles? When you get into gimmicks like top attack missiles, that complicates things even further. The more variables you add to a vehicle, the more difficult it is to balance. Another thing that makes IFVs so difficult to balance is how situational they are. For something like the M3 Bradley, CQC is a nightmare. Your cannon is practically useless against anything but light targets, and your ATGMs take a long time to deploy. On the M3A3 it's a completely different story. Though the gun is the same, it now has access to ammunition that actually does some damage and has a bit more penetration, making it perfectly viable in city maps. Unless your vehicle can fire ATGMs while on the move, you are essentially a glorified anti-air vehicle until you can stop and deploy your missiles. That makes it difficult to play aggressively with a lot of IFVs in the game, and naturally, I think that makes them more difficult to play overall. This difficulty leads to lower player stats, which in turn leads to these vehicles being especially undertiered. This even applies to vehicles that can use their missiles on the move. Take the BMP-2M for example. It was perfectly fine where it was when it was released, but the new players rushing to buy it had no idea how to play an IFV. If my memory serves me right, it saw not one, but 2 BR reductions shortly after it was released. Not all IFVs are undertiered though. The STRF 9040 build is a perfect example of that. The original STRF 9040 absolutely stomped when it was added, and that only had a cannon. So Gaijin assumed that a version with top attack missiles would need to be at a high BR, except they forgot that in the meantime, small caliber APFSD shells were nerfed. That and the fact that the Bill's stabilizer cuts out at 25 km an hour. The Bill is essentially a worse M3A3, but a full BR higher. Neither of them deserve to be at the battle ratings they are. The most egregious example of IFV balancing is probably the Type 89 though. Pound for pound, it is one of the best IFVs in the game, having an incredibly powerful gun, great mobility, and the ability to fire missiles on the move. Really, its only limiting factor is how many ATGMs it has, yet it sits only 0.3 above the M3 Bradley, a vehicle that needed a ton of buffs to even be playable. IFVs aren't inherently bad, but they are one of the more problematic vehicle types in the game. BR decompression is one solution, though I think that when Gaijin adds more IFVs, they'll need to give them some extra attention. Maybe rely more on user feedback than user stats. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.